of mine commissioned me to build a gun case for his AK-47, and he wanted it made out of a pallet. And I started taking this thing apart, and the wood started splitting, and it was a real mess. I'm not even going to mess with this. I'm just going to go ahead and make the gun case out of oak. So let's get started. So I pulled some wood out of my wood pile, and this case is going to be roughly 5 inches tall, 12 inches wide, and 37 inches long. So I got to start milling this up on the planer. This planer is awesome. It's the Grizzly 15-inch version. It's got the helical head and produces fantastic cuts. So I've got 5 boards here. The narrowest is 5 3/4, and I'm going to take them all down to 5 1/4, which should give me plenty of height. All right, and I'm going to glue them up, and then I'm going to, right now they're still about 3/4, I'm going to glue them up at 3/4 of an inch, and then I'm going to plane them down once I get them glued. So top to bottom of my buddy's gun is 11 inches. And I'm going to take this down to about 3/8, maybe a little bit more, which means this panel is going to end up being about 12 inches wide. And I got to put the spacer board in here, this extra piece of wood in here, in order to get that width that I want. And I need 2 of these panels, one for the top, one for the bottom. So let's do the glue up next. Once the glue up's done, then I can mill these down to final size and thickness and length and width, and I'll do the final milling of the thickness tomorrow, as well as I'll start putting the dovetails in. Okay, when I do my glue ups, first of all, of course, I make sure that I've got a nice clean surface here, nice clean straight flat surface and square surface. And then I'm going to use my mustard container Tight Bond 3. These mustard containers are really handy for once you get the nozzle all skunked up on your regular Tight Bond 3 bottles. So this is a good auxiliary bottle to use. I go through a lot of mustard. I'm a big pretzel eater. I'm going to plane the sides down to 1/2 inch, and I think I'm going to do the top and bottom at 3/8 of an inch. So I've got to determine the height of the sides, and the handle to pull back and charge the weapon is 3 1/2, and I'm going to make the sides 3 7/8. And the reason I'm doing that is I'm going to use this Peachtree dovetail jig, and if you got flexibility to get the edges of the boards like from this point to this point, it makes it a lot easier to set it up. So what I'm going to do now is go ahead and rip the sides to 3 7/8. Okay, so I'm just doing a little test fit in order to get the length of the sides here. And it looks like I'll be okay if I cut the small side pieces to 12 inches, maybe a little shy. Okay, so I got square up one end, and then I got my little stop block and my auxiliary fence here. It's set at 12 inches. So I can use my little auxiliary fence here for when I use longer boards. And if you got one of these self-centering doweling jigs, this thing makes a great clamp and stop block. So I get this set for 37. Next step of the process is to set up for my dovetails. This is a Peachtree dovetail jig, and I'm using my new Moxon vise. And if you haven't seen that video, I'll leave a link on how I made this at the end of this video. The way the fixture works is you use these straight slots in order to use the dovetail bit. So I've drawn a line for the width of the boards, for the side boards, and then I'm going to go ahead and just cut these. And on the dovetails, you can do these two at a time. So I got 2 pieces of wood in there. Okay, so I put a little piece of tape here, and that's in order to minimize a tear out. And I charged up the batteries. I got these on sale last year for 50 bucks over at Home Depot. Can't beat that. All you got to do is go real slow and just have that bearing ride inside this finger. I can make sure everything's nice and tight. And get going. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to use the fixture and a couple pieces of wood in order to elevate the long sides. And all you got to do is take the dovetail board and flush it up on both sides. And I'm going to draw a couple lines. You actually only need 2 lines, but I like doing all of them. And this will give me the lines in order to put the fingers for the pins on here. Okay, same routine. I drew a line on there and I lowered the rabbiting bit for the pins down enough. Now I've got to put a piece of tape on there. So I went ahead and elevated this hose a little bit to try to capture more of the sawdust coming off here. I've got my depth set. This is locked down. This is locked down now. And the trick with this is just going slow. And now these will fit perfectly in the tails. And when you're changing this board, you can't do this. You have to do this. So I'm just going to go ahead and cut these last 3 pin boards. Be back to you in a little bit. Hey, by the way, if you haven't seen the couple videos I did on these Ryobi routers and how I made these bases, I'll leave a link to them at the end of this program. I really like having this way out here. I never really liked holding this like this. I think this is a much safer setup. Next step of the process is just take a little bit of the fuzzies off the joints. And as you can see, show you this. This produces a really tight joint. I always like to make the fingers just a little bit longer, and then I sand those down flush. So now what I'm going to do is go ahead and glue this together. So for my glue ups, what I like to do is again use my tight bond and applying glue on the dovetails. I just like using my solder brush, my flux solder brush. Okay, I'm going to use my fancy dancy veneered crosscut sled. And if you haven't seen a video on how I made this, I'll leave a link for that at the end of this video. I'm just going to square this up, and I'm going to cut this to length and width, and then fit these top. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and attach this with a combination of glue and some 23 gauge pin nails. This will be super strong. Just a little glue, it'll spread. And then once this dries, I'll be able to cut the lid off. Alrighty then. I got it all sanded up, everything's nice and flush. Now's the fun part, to separate the lid from the body. This is really the only way to make a box. If you try to make the lid and the base separate, you got a really good chance it's not going to match up perfectly. But right now I got this completely flush all the way around. I had a couple tiny cracks I filled with some putty, and now it's time to separate. So this is always my favorite part. This final cut, cut a couple wedges like that. So in this final cut, I like to cut a couple wedges here, so I don't get any pinching of the blade. And that, boys and girls, is how you do it. wanted to just plane these perfectly smooth and flush. And then I can sand the whole thing. Okay, I'm just going to flush up all the dovetails. Oh, that looks good. I'll give it a little protective finish. And I got some army green paint for the outside, so it kind of looks military. Okie doke, coming down the home stretch. Just gotta paint it and then put the hardware on, I'll be done. So I went with this army green color here. Okay, here's the big reveal. Done. It's Friday afternoon. Been working on this since Monday. Probably got about 16 hours into this. So I put shellac on the inside, a couple bumpers so the rifle's not actually sitting on the wood. Put a little bit of leather on that saddle there. I made a little case for magazines. My buddy's gonna have to put his magazines in there. And yeah, it came out pretty good. I put a black piano hinge on there that you saw earlier. Put some rubber bumpers on each end. And then also on the bottom when it's sitting like that. And here's the rifle itself. It fits in there really nice. Got a little gap on the top, little gap on the bottom. It's nice and secure, looks good. So here's a few parting shots that you can see the entire project. The rifle sits in there just fine. In New Jersey, we have 10-round magazines, so that little pocket there will hold several magazines, not the 30-round clips like the rest of the country has. And hey, thanks for tuning in today. I really appreciate you spending a few minutes of your day with me. Hey, don't go away. I got some specifications on the case coming up here shortly. And if you haven't seen some of my other videos on my shotgun builds, please go check them out. Oh yeah, here's the specifications. I worked on this from Monday through Friday of this week. And it's a little bit heavy, but hey, that's what men are for. So, hey, thanks for watching. Please like, comment, and subscribe. Bye.